if any one of you have watched Simon Garfunkel's recording of their famous album in Central Park, New York, you would recall that the mayor of New York had introduced that music performance, and all he said, he came up to the stage, he was invited, and he came up to the stage and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Simon and Garfunkel," and he walked out. And for a long time, that was the yardstick that I thought was to be for any introduction to any lecture or any event. But today I'm going to fall way below that measure that I had set myself, because I want to introduce, it's an attempt actually, so in a way it's the first edition of what we want to have a series of lectures on internal security at IDSA. And to launch that first edition, we have a very distinguished bureaucrat, and what we just now tried to refine the word bureaucrat to something else, but he has a distinguished career in the Indian Administrative Service, Mr. G.K. Pillai. I don't need to introduce him. He chose this topic himself, Manipur the Way Forward. Manipur, as we all know, is in a boil for decades. And to contextualize it, since 1st of August this year, the state has been paralyzed with multiple blockades. Last year, the state was paralyzed and choked by a 68-day blockage. Today, we've already crossed about 55 days or more. Hospitals run out of oxygen. There's no fuel. There's no essential commodities. Whatever is available is beyond the reach of common people. Manipur is probably one of the states in the country which needs far more attention than anything else in terms of internal security. And sir, now it's over to you.
Thank you. I particularly picked Manipur because in one sense, among all the states of the Northeast that I've dealt with over the last 10-15 years, this is the state that in one sense has been perhaps the most difficult to crack, or difficult in one sense to understand. And to an extent, it's a state where I've had in one sense the least success also. And I thought therefore that it would be good to talk about Manipur, to try and what I would put it as understanding Manipur. Because today many of us have forgotten that Manipur not only was, as it once described, as the Switzerland and of India, it's a kingdom with a great ancient history, which most people have forgotten. The Meitei kings, their history literally in chronicled down for centuries. And when they came to the position in 1947, I will not go with the history itself, it's a fascinating story about this country. And I put the country as Manipur as a country, and I'm going to put it that way. That when it came in 1947, it was a princely kingdom. British rule was there, the British agent and all had been there, but it had its first constitution. It was, even the J&K constitution came later, but Manipur had the constitution even before India had its constitution. And they had the first Manipur assembly elections in July 1948, and seats which were there were under the proportional representation, general category, then the Hill, and then Mohammedan. It's a very surprising thing that you will find that you have Muslims in Manipur, and there's a history behind how the Muslims got settled in Manipur itself, again from the Ahom kingdom, and they're coming in from Assam. And they had 2 seats for educational and commercial interests extra. You can see that sort of, so you had 38 plus 18, 56, 3 for the Muslims or the Mohammedans as they were called that time, and 2, so 61 seats, and the assembly was in place when India became, I mean, post-independence, and before, in fact, what I would call as the accession or merger took place. We had the first problem, or the first controversy came which over the Maharaja's accession in October 1949. Many Manipuris or Maithis believe that the Maharaja accession was not proper, that he was forced, and there is the very famous, at least, is that Vallabhbhai Patel's famous remark when people told him that the Maharaja of Manipur was not signing the accession depend, he said, "Is there not a brigadier in Shillong?" This is part of the folklore in Manipur today, and where you've seen that in 1962 when the Chinese invasion took place, and then Jawaharlal Nehru said, "My heart goes out to the people of Assam," and they've never forgotten or forgiven Jawaharlal Nehru for that statement, which they said that gave the impression that they were abandoning Assam to the Chinese. And this is again the, "Is there not a brigadier in Shillong?" That statement is something which is part of folklore in Manipur. And I think what really happened, if you look at, I think for people in Delhi at that time, and I'm only trying to, because I don't think there is any, I've tried to see a lot of study on some of the original records of that time. I think they were so busy with the partition in terms of the influx which came in from Pakistan, and I would put it as the Jammu and Kashmir issue, that the northeastern states were literally became what we would call as peripheral states. They were not paid too much attention, and therefore a lot of action was taken, which today in hindsight, I think in the first 10-15 years, if you could go back and rewrite what you did that time, I think almost 75% of the problems of the Northeast would not be there. If you see, Manipur at the time when, after the merger, it was declared as a Part C state, and it was administered by a chief commissioner with an advisory council comprised of the Manipur Congress and others. And I think the first shock, if you want to put it, Manipur, I sometimes use it, and you might like it. My talk today will be very highly focused upon, in fact, in one sense, the Maithis, because it's the Manipuri kingdom is in one sense a Maithi kingdom, but it's Manipur as such. It was one of the, I think, the real shock from which they've in one sense never recovered. You have to remember this: a country, unique history, a tremendous culture, a very proud people, etc. And then you suddenly make them with a constitution, assembly, king, etc. And overnight they become a Part C state administered by a chief commissioner, nominated by the government of India. The first chief commissioner lasted only 3 days. He lasted only 3 days. He insulted the then Maharaja. And even though it's not very well documented, but oral testimony and some of the statements which these chief commissioners made, the first two chief commissioners, because that's the first impression people have, were in fact, I think, the real role of government of India. I think the negative aspects came in as part of, I think we didn't select people who had enough sensitivity and understanding of Manipur. And then as the states evolved, I mean Manipur, the evolution, it became a union territory status in 56, and then a second shock which came was the formation of the state of Nagaland in 1962-63. I put it 62-63 even though the state came in 63 because the act came up in 62. A small district in Assam, which in one sense Manipur looked down upon. You've got kings of Manipur who said that we went right up to Kohima and it was, we defeated the Naga tribes and so on and so forth. They got a full statehood, agitation, violence and so on and so forth. And during all this period, right up to the whole of 60s, Manipur was one of the most peaceful states. Then you formed 63, the Territorial Legislative Assembly. And then in 1964, the UNLF was formed. The importance of 1964 is that UNLF, I think, in one sense was formed, and I think even today, and I will substantiate that over the period when I talk, the Meitei insurgents groups were all formed to defend the territorial integrity of Manipur. The Meiteis felt that they had no confidence in the government of India defending Manipur's territorial integrity, and therefore you will find that in 1964, after UNLF, and then you had PLA, and you had all sorts of groups which we'll come into later, and that is why you will find the significance of the Meitei insurgent groups and the hold that they have upon the administration is very, very thick administration, very close. They got full statehood, agitation, burning, violence, bunds, etc. in 1972, and then it took another 20 years of agitation before it finally, the Manipuri language was included in the 8th schedule in 1992. The Manipuri psyche, in one sense, if you want to put it that way, or if I put it sometimes bluntly as sometimes the Meitei psyche, because the psyche of the tribals and the hill tribals are slightly different. They never recovered from the shock of the kingdom becoming a Part C state and subsequently. They put it very sort of bluntly. I've said it a number of times openly. We've heard of people getting into depression. I think the Manipuri collective psyche is a collective depression. They haven't recovered from that because we've really not looked at the state in that sense. They just wanted to give you this particular background, because if you do not understand this background and if you're not able to look at it and move forward, understanding this as the basis or the foundation on which the current situation is, we'll never be able to move forward and we'll always end up with roadblocks. Look at Kangla Fort, occupied by the Assam Rifles as a part of the British when they came in, and Assam Rifles occupied Kangla Fort. For any basic student of Manipur history, the significance of Kangla Fort for the Meitei psychology or the Manipuri psychology in one sense is immense. I remember when I was in 96, when I had come as JSNE and reading about history of Manipur, any number of books, and all the reasons were given were the standard reasons which we would give in any other case. You know, if today you said Red Fort is to be given away to somebody, you will say, no, it is meant what? Within few weeks' time, the ministers will parcel out and real estate development and all that land will be sold away and so on and so forth. Very strong arguments by the Ministry of Defence and Assam Rifles. It should never be given away, it will all be sold out, it's a real estate. I still remember people telling me that, this minister has already sold off, 3 acres of Kangla Fort and 2 acres of Kangla Fort and so on. And you can only say that because you have no idea of Manipuri history. And finally, almost a decade when it was finally handed over, and it's 10 years have almost gone by after it's handed over, and if you see the Kangla Fort today as it is, you can see in the psyche, I don't think any government in Manipur which even dares to think of even giving away half an inch of that land will not last a day. That is the importance of understanding the history of Manipur. And I think in the Manipur history, they always felt that who controlled Kangla Fort controlled Manipur. And when it finally came back, I think it was a great one significant step for them to assuage that feeling of what I would call as hurt and that insult which was there. And then again, you had that extension of the ceasefire to Manipur and the subsequent revocation, which again happened, and then you had to do it again because you didn't understand that whole issue of the territorial integrity, which was the fundamental basis for Manipur, the Meitei insurgents, to come up at all. Now, because I've talked so much about Meiteis and you've got the hill tribes and so on, I just thought I'd just give you a few minutes on the Meiteis themselves. The Meiteis are actually of what you would call as the Tibeto-Burman or Indo-Mongolite group. Linguistically and racially, as I mentioned here, they are really one with the other hill tribes. There is no difference. The real difference came about a few centuries ago when Hinduism came to Manipur. And when the Meitei kings were persuaded to become what we call as Vaishnavite Hindus, I think the first break between what I would call as the hill tribes and the Meiteis really came. Because to an extent you brought a little bit of that Hindu distinctions, caste distinctions, exclusivity, untouchables, and so on and so forth came in as part of this. I think the real important thing is that while Hinduism came and they adopted by the ruling class, Meiteis do not have any class system. They don't have Brahmins. They have slightly, you can call it people who are slightly, but they don't have that untouchability and that's in the entire Meitei community at all, which is in one sense a thing which throwback to the fact that in the tribal milieu in which they came from, there was equality among all. And therefore, the Hinduism that came had all Hindus were equal. They did not have untouchability in that. And therefore, you see when I'm just giving, many of them well documented in when Maharaja Panaiba, who was known as Garib Niwas, and you had even today when you have the Hiyang Tanaba festival, the Nagas of Michael village are given priority in the royal procession. Why? Because the Nagas of Michael were the ones that the king was brought up in that Naga village. Or you look at the coronation ceremony of the Manipuri kings, you always have the kings and queens coming in the costume of the Naga community. Look at the principal residence of the Maharaja of Manipur. The architecture is entirely tribal architecture of the houses, totally different from the normal Meitei architecture which you see in the rest of the valley. And just the next Maharaja which came, Maharaja Baige Chandra, Jai Singh, or you call it Chingtam Khomba. Look at his name, Ching from hills, Tam is plains or valley, and Khomba is the unifier. He is the unifier of the hills and valleys. That was basically his name. And I think this unification and this linkage which was there between the valley and the hill tribes, in one sense got spoiled over the years, and we'll come to that issue a little later. What is the current scenario? You have 34 armed groups. You can take it plus or minus depending on which day you are speaking. Groups form and set up. We have a surrender of operation with some of the groups, some of the Kuki groups, the PLFI and so on. And in recent last couple of years, you had the autonomous council elections boycotted by the Naga groups. So you've got a situation today where, except possibly Chorachandpur and possibly Tamenglong, where at least there was a substantial percentage of people who voted, but you also have an autonomous council, say in Ukhrul district, which has only 2% of the people voted, and you have a president of the district council and members with only 2% of the people, rest boycotted the polls. Therefore, it has in one sense led to an increasing ethnic divide, which you see there. We've got now the head of the UNLF, Megan, is in custody. He's in Guwahati jail. And you find that increasingly in the last few years, the Meitei groups have, the underground groups, and I put it as Meitei groups, I should have added Meitei underground groups, are very much into what we call as social activism. They have in one sense, I don't want to use the word, it is like Sanskritization which used to be there. They do the same thing. They do microfinance, they give money to those who are poor. They also invest we've got number of health hospitals, private clinics and so on and so forth are all funded by the Meitei underground groups. Why I put it again, Meitei underground groups or the overground groups, there is hardly any, the linkage is so obvious in one sense, if you want to put it. If you have the DGP of police, his very close relation is heading one underground group. You have the chief minister's brother-in-law will be in the underground group. There is a minister, his nephew or his cousin is an important functionary in the Meitei underground groups. It is that close. There is no difference between the government and the underground, because I still believe that it is because they all believe that they are all there finally to protect Manipur's territorial integrity. Then you had the highway blockade, which was mentioned earlier. You got this blockade by the Naga groups, and now you got the Kuki groups doing it this year. You have counter blockade by the Naga groups, and price of petrol is about 140 rupees per litre. Here you are worried about it 65. We are all want to go and do Bharat Bandh. It's 140. Nobody's bothered. LPG is about a little over 1,000, 1,200, etc. Last year it was 2,000, and it has become so accepted that today people come. I was there, Manipur, less than 2 weeks ago. People come and park their car at 5 p.m. in the evening and come back the next day. And I don't believe that the question really is of shortage of petrol or diesel. We've got 18 days stock. In the normal, if nothing was there, you had enough capacity for 27 days stock. Nobody stocked kerosene for 1 year or 2 years stock. It's not there because of all the underground capacity. You have 18 days stock. This has now become a huge racket. It's a racket because any one time there are young boys and girls who are willing to stand in the queue. And whenever you want petrol, they are willing to exchange their place. You pay them 80 rupees a day. So you pay 80 rupees and you can jump the queue. And so you can put it as unemployment and a Narega scheme for those who don't want. The youth have decided entrepreneurship. It's so smart that they are. And the government very cleverly will say you can scooter 5 liters you can take 10 liters only, because they would like to have people standing in queue and wasting a lot of their time. They think that that is a good way. It used to be the old Soviet Union days. They used to say, keep everybody in a queue, then they don't have time for revolution. One queue for bread. When you bought bread, then you go and stand in the line for eggs, then you stand in line for milk, then it's like that. So the whole day they are spent in queue, so they have no time to worry about the revolution and so on, because they are getting enough to. And this is what is happening literally in Manipur. This queue system has become, and the black market, you find just outside the petrol pump, ladies are all selling in 1 liter bottles like this. They are selling petrol at 140 rupees a liter very happily. It's side business for them. 20% of the petrol goes out to the police, which is earmarked for their activities. Half of it finds itself into the black market, and there's it's a vicious cycle which is there. Nobody understands. If you see the cookie groups who are doing this in the Southern Hills, money which is possibly siphoned off from the development funds will be used to get the crowds which you need, because there is no work. So people, you want them to go sit on dharna. Today you have to pay them, otherwise nobody is going to come and sit them sit down and do a dharna, so you pay them whatever 80, 100, 150 rupees a day, and that money is again siphoned off from the development funds, and therefore you say no development will take place either. And this is sort of, in one sense, the current scenario. I'm just giving you a broad view. And I'm talking about what is the central political perspective as people look at. One, you see 2 Lok Sabha seats, so it's not very important for, seats are not really going to help keep a person in power or not. And we see, the political system sees this, it's incorrigible, it's dysfunctional, a corrupt administration, there's nothing we can do. There is no shared vision for the state. What do you want Manipur to be? And I'll come to that. The complex ethnic problems, every time you come, one day you come, you say it is a Methi problem, then it's a Naga problem, then it's a Paite problem, then it's a Kuki problem, and people are, you've got Paumes, you name the different groups, etc., and what they want, and, it's, at the political level, hardly anybody, they say it's difficult to understand, it's difficult to resolve. So, just forget about it. It's not something which we can do. And they say the local politicians are only interested in central money, and so long as violence is managed within tolerable limits, it's okay. Create too much of a problem, or suddenly something comes up, like suddenly if tomorrow all the channels start showing that, petrol is 140 rupees and 10 people are starving to death and so on and so forth, and become breaking news for the next 7 days, it can stay in the sidelines. It's not important. It's in one sense, I'm giving you on the political aspect. I'm looking at many aspects. Because when politicians from Manipur come, when the chief minister, when the others come, they never discuss Manipur's problems. They come basically say, we want money for this, we want money for that, we want money for this. And you give them the money, they're very happy, they go back. They never discuss any of these issues which you are talking about, whether you've got the various issues which are there. I really haven't seen any very significant discussion on the issues. You have all the time, you'll discuss something on the highway blockade, you'll discuss something when Muiwa's visit came and it was blocked there, then there's a scramble to try and resolve that issue. The rest of the time, it's so long as violence is only less than 10 people or 20 people get killed in a year, some extortion, etc., is tolerable. That's in one sense the central political perspective. Look at what's in the state political perspective. What are the state MLAs, state ministers and other things? They think the center doesn't understand it. Very little understanding of what Manipur's problems are. And the center believes, from their point, center believes money will solve all problems. I'm not going into old issues where, the stories which came that, Bhutta Singh flew down with bags in the Avro aircraft and so on and so forth, and money went and governments were toppled and so on and so forth. There's a whole history of what they would call. And the center plays one group against the other, so center is high-handed, arrogant. The center has neglected state's core problems. And I think in the state's core problems, I'll mention some of them. I think one of the key problems, when I come to one of the way forward, I'll mention that. And the center is a good money source. Center gives enough, more than enough money, that gives them enough to be able to, what I would call as, for them to look after themselves as the political class, bureaucratic class, and it also helps them to keep the insurgents happy, because the insurgents get their share of the money which they cycle back into the system. You've seen when the UNLF, you've seen Megan's arrest leading to the fact that he had restaurants, he had shopping malls, he had other things, everything else running in Bangladesh and so on and so forth. So we even had, I think, one of the, it was a DHT group person who had, of all places, he had paid $60,000 upfront to Sheraton hotels and had a stay, which if you pay $60,000, I didn't even know that till If you pay $60,000, they give you a card which entitles you to a suite in any hotel in Sheraton all over the world. So when some of these insurgent groups you think that are small, struggling for survival and so on and so forth, they think very big. They like, some of them were caught in Bangalore in a massage parlors and so on and so forth. They look after themselves quite well. So it's a different, world altogether. I think now that I've, in one sense, put it together in one sense of, I put it a little negative scenario in terms of all this. I think there's a whole series of what I would call as things which are changing. And I'm indebted to this to my batchmate Falguni Rajkumar. He's put it in his book. He put this Bob Dylan, The Times They Are Changing. And he says, please come gather around people wherever you roam and admit that the waters around you have grown. And accept that that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. And his last line is again, for the times they are changing. And I think today you see that I think there is a churning process over the last 50, 60 years which has taken place. The youth in one sense, the thinking is quite different. If you look at in many areas, especially in the hospitality industry and so on, a whole pile of people from Manipur have gone out. Particularly from the hill tribes. You go to Bangalore, you can see any hotel. There's no hotel which doesn't have a Manipuri person in the hotel. I've actually visited one of the restaurants where, except the owner who is a Karnataka person, everybody from the accountant to the cashier to the right down to the chef, cook, waiters, waitresses, etc., are all from Manipur. And they're all they're just saying, we wait for another 2-3 years, we're learning the restaurant business, we'll either buy out this guy or we'll set up our own business. That is the outlook which is coming. And I just thought the times they are changing in one sense is really, it's changing because a lot of things, but you also realize that there's a helplessness to many people who cannot in one sense get out. And they are then really sucked into the system. I mean, there are, I think, today, if I'm not mistaken, there are from Ukrul district, Tankul, there are about 10,000 of them in Delhi alone. 10,000. 1/3 are in government service, 1/3 in youth, and 1/3 working in different aspects. And if you look at what is the way forward, I think the real challenge for us is understanding, empathy, sincerity, respect in the dealings. Actually, we look far too much at what we call as the money. Come, give more money, give more, give one more central university and so on and so forth. And we don't realize that sometimes giving money only creates sometimes more problem. I just give a classic example of Jammu and Kashmir. They wanted, there's a state university, and you first came up and said central university. And we argued in the Home Ministry for a long time, don't give a central university. We said, just strengthen. You were giving 1,500 crores for a central university. We said, give only 500 crores. That would be enough to make that state university a really top-class university. But you started with one central university, then Jammu wanted another. So you had to finally give 2 central universities. And what happened? You 1,500 crores and 1,500 crores, so 3,000 crores. And when these universities come, what happens? The teachers from the state university will all migrate to the central university. And your state university then disintegrates. And that will be another source of resentment. Because, you call it by a very proud state university and then you finally make it useless by putting 2 central universities. So these are some of the impact which comes because you don't understand, you don't think through in one sense what are the problems. And you have to involve all communities. You have to involve because today we talk to 10, 20, 50, 100 people, politicians, some MLAs or somebody who comes. And the rest of the people who are down below, because there the communities are so strong, we never talk to the community leaders in the villages and so on and so forth. And because we are unable to interact with them on a sustained long-term basis, we find ourselves again, the blame comes on the center because you are not listening to us, you have no understanding, you are keeping on giving money to X, you know he is a crook, you know he is corrupt, and you still continue to give it, and you are not involving the communities who really want, whether it's a small road, whether it's a health center, or whether it's education, you want some teachers, anything you want. And there's a lot of community action which is taking place at the grassroots level, but it's limited role because they don't have the real backing, because you've not had decentralized administration really going into the field. So I put it as first, I think, way forward, the first most important thing is rebuilding trust. And when you say rebuilding trust, I said there are certain things which, what I called as the core issues, which you have to deal with those. And if you don't deal with these core issues, you will always find you come back to square one again. And the core issues will be, I put it, and it's not something I put apology, regret by the PM or the mistakes made in the past. I think this is important, because in the Northeast, people, in their psyche, they feel that there is a certain sense of injustice, and you have to meet that, and you have to say that yes, it's something that happened in the past, we made the mistake, they are willing to accept that. But if you are not willing to say it, you just say, no, all I did, everything was right, you will never move forward. And that is why the trust. And I think it is the apology. People have come and said so many things which happened, we made, and the mistakes made in the past. Whether it's, right from the merger agreement to the fact that the state was formed much later, to the fact that the language agitation, to the Kangla fort having only been given to them in 2000 and so on and so forth. It's worth saying that yes, we made the mistake. I think the people from in the area will forgive you. Repeal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, I think it's long overdue. It's not because of anything else. The Justice Jeevan Reddy committee said, after all, what the army says is, if you want us to operate, we need protection, otherwise we can't operate. Please give them the protection in a different way. You don't have to give it in the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. You can give it in some other act, you can call it a different name, etc. But just repealing the Armed Forces Special Powers Act will have psychologically, it will have a major impact. I mentioned about, whether it's Hiram Sharmila there for 10 years, nobody's bothered, only now started to look at it a little bit because Anna Hazare's fast came. I mean, it's just the type of thing which takes place. And looking at harmony between the various ethnic groups, there are very small issues at each level, and you have to look at each small. And we've done this. I'm not getting into this because I'll need hours and hours to this. And I'm not saying that any of this is something totally new. All this has been now put forward in a paper which is in the Ministry of Home Affairs, and we are hoping that it will go to the powers that be to discuss and to move forward. Maybe because of the Manipur assembly elections, it may wait for 3-4 months. I don't think waiting 3 months or 4 months is not the important part of it. It's a fact that here you realize that these are the issues on which you will have to take steps. Because if you don't take these steps, then you're really not addressing the core issues. And I'm giving you some of the specific steps. And I think one of the first steps is to involve the local communities to meet specific needs. People are not interested. You say, okay, I want to build a, Tipai Muk Dam, it'll come in 10 years and it'll give me something else. I don't think they're really interested in that. They're interested in their small, they want a small road, they want a small health clinic, they want a school, they want some teachers to be posted. These are the small aspects on which you have to take steps. And these are all now very well available. Whether it's, you take village by village or district by district, you've got a set of 10 or 20, 30 things on which each district you can take action. I think if you involve the local community and you meet those specific demands, people will then start believing they'll trust you. Because when I went to Ukrul and we did one of these development seminars and they followed, came back after a month. They came back because they said, sir, you came, you promised something. 48 hours later, they started tarring the road. So they said, at least, otherwise they thought, aap bhi aa gaya, you went and made a speech and you went away, and that's the last we'll hear of, we'll see of you or the development projects or the systems which you talked about. Small things which affect local communities. And there are a whole pile and list of them which are available. And we need to get those done. And improving connectivity. I'll talk about air connectivity. I think today, possibly other than Assam, possibly Manipur, Imphal is possibly well connected. Most people are not aware, there are about 13 flights a day to Manipur. All flights are full. Except possibly the evening flight by Air India is possibly the one which has some seats available. But you can see that just, and it was not there 2 years ago. And getting these flights in has, to one small extent, removed that little bit of, the distance has gone away. Because you can come from Delhi or you can go and come back in the evening, literally in the evening to Imphal. And I think that makes a difference. Rail, it's something which in 1996 when I went with Deva Gowda and we did this 7 states yatra, and I still remember I'm telling him that except for Assam, there's 10 kilometers of railway line in Tripura. And Manipur, what remains today and in 96 remains the same. You put 1 kilometer into Manipur, set up the Jiribam railway station and announce in Parliament Manipur is connected by railway. And I put it, and I keep it very strongly, it's like saying to UP, I crossed the Yamuna and put in just beyond Mayur Vihar, I put a railway line. And I announced in Parliament, UP is connected by rail. Neither the Taj Mahal, nor Agra, nor Lucknow, nor Varanasi, nor Kanpur, nowhere else you connect. What would the people of UP feel? Are they going to give you a shabash? And this is exactly 60 years after independence, there's only 1 kilometer of railway line into Manipur at Jiribam railway station. That's it. 60 years has gone by. Today, I think it was 6 years ago, inauguration of Jiribam to Imphal, at least the state capital to be collected, sanction was given. We hope by 2014 to 2016, that 100 kilometers, 100 and odd thing would get completed. But it should have been done decades ago, and it's still taking long because it's the lowest priority for the railways, and you have all sorts of problems. Nobody wants to be posted there. A contractor can be given, and somebody goes and puts an extortion notice to the contractor, and he runs away, and then you re-tender and so on, and it will go on for another. So, if building the railway line to Imphal and then from Imphal down to various other places, to Bishnupur, to up to Moreh and so on and so forth, is in one sense very critical. And then road. Because air was hardly there, rail was non-existent, the only connection is by road. And both NH, the old 39 and 59, or today, for those of you who don't know, it is now called NH2, and now it's NH37. I'm not even sure why they changed all these names. I never had the Ministry of Road Transport should really come out with a full-page advertisement why you changed it and what, because many people don't know. And if you say, you tell your driver, go to NH39, there's no NH39 today, it goes somewhere else. So people should really know what is the, why you change the name and what are the new names which people need to know. And I think this connectivity, which is so important in these areas, because this is the lifeline. Whether they can take out their produce, whether they can move, take people for hospitals, and when emergency takes place. Even today, you have areas where, if you in subdivisional headquarters, if you fall ill, you have to be taken literally by stretcher for almost half a day by walking, and then to a nearest road from where a Tata Safari or an Innova will take you to the hospital. And by that time, most people have died. And it's especially important for women who delivery and pregnancy and so on, we find any number of aspects. And then a sports package. And I call it a sports package because Manipur, in fact, is, I don't know, when the last national games, I think it came second in India. It's got one of the most talented sports people, whether it's boxing, football, and so on. I think the women's football team, I think 9 out of 11. India's football team, I think 9 out of 11 is Manipuris. And you've got such talent in sports that it's a wonder that we've not really been pushing, and sports ministry has not been, because they're meeting even you've got, world championships in many things. Forget about Mary Kom and others in so many other sports, especially in the unarmed combat and so on. They're world champions. And nobody even knows here that they are. So I think a sports package in terms of what I would call as scholarships to be able to take them out. If you can take them out if you give a scholarship of 4,000 rupees a month, as a sports scholarship, many of them will study and they will also pick up these sports. And then the tourism package, which again, we see this in terms of it's one of the areas where a lot of employment is created. And so long as you have unemployed youth and money flows into the hands of the insurgents, your own money, the insurgents will pay them 3,000 rupees and they'll go underground. You can't give everybody a government job. You can give any amount of adventure tourism. You've got any other type of sports in the Loktal Leh. You've got any type of water sports and so on can be done. Gives a tremendous amount of boost. That's again something which will give employment both in the hills. And you don't need 5-star hotels or 3-star hotels. You really need small, 3-bedroom guest houses and at different points, because there's nobody going to stay there for weeks together. People will come for a day, 2 days. So you really need at every little village, you just need 2 to 3. Something which is actually being done in J&K now slowly. And I think it's possible to bring that in to the Manipur and the Northeast. Skill upgradation is important. Moray and the trade with Myanmar, which is equally important, it is more psychological, because for Manipur, the ties with Myanmar or Burma has always been there. The Kabao Valley, they always feel was theirs. They have families and relations who are still across the border, and it's something which, I don't know whether any of you have seen Mandalay Fort. If you see Mandalay Fort and you see Kangla Fort, they're identical. Identical, except for the size. One is slightly smaller, but otherwise they're identical. Exactly. That was the same architect had built it. And greater autonomy for the hill districts. I think within the territorial integrity of Manipur is enough scope for giving greater autonomy for the hill districts. For the first time, some element of elections were held after, I think, 26 years or something. I don't know, 84 was the last election. Then now, the so-called even Naga peace talks are going on, and its implications and inclusion of other stakeholders is going to be very, very critical. I can't say more on the Naga peace talks because it's something which is under process, but I think it's something that is going to, as I mentioned, keep in one sense the territorial integrity of Manipur and give enough flexibility to what I would call as even the Naga aspirations. And I think that track, the discussions are on the right track. I am hopeful that by the end of 2012, we should be able to, what I would call it at least as a memorandum of understanding on the broad features. It's taken a long time. I think these are things which take time because let us face the fact that the world view of people in the Northeast is quite different from what our worldview is. And it will take time for them to understand us, it will take time for us to understand them in many senses. And many areas where we don't understand is, again, primarily because we say, why doesn't somebody take action? And we don't realize that these are tribal societies, societies which are very closely knit, very inward looking. And therefore, this question for us to say, no, he's done something wrong, take action, suspend him. For them, even if, I'm just giving an example, I think the DGP Nagaland, we find exactly he's taken 20 crores, he's misappropriated. Any other place, I would have, within 24 hours, he would have been suspended. Here we write to him, they are, they say, it's a suspension is a loss of face for him, it belongs to this community, which is, the same as the community as the chief minister and so on and so forth. And I think 6 months have gone and nothing has happened, I think. At least that's to my knowledge. You can't help it. A DGP and a SP and a constable. If the DGP and the constable are of the same community, I'm just giving an example, they are our community, and the SP is Angami. The moment the SP takes action against the constable goes straight to the DGP and say, we are out. And he says, you are out, then okay, then I'll protect you. It is, you have to understand that. It's going to take time. For them, that bond of community, tribal bond is far superior to any other rules and so on and so forth we put. The whole Westminster model of administration which we superimpose there, it's alien to their culture. So their things all, what we've done is, that's another story, another thesis on its own. By just putting this Westminster model on this, what we have done is we have actually corrupted the entire system, including the village councils and the thing, etc., which were in so much of harmony, which actually decided everything, and then you put this whole new chief minister, MLAs and thing, etc., superimposed on top, and this conflict is still not resolved in those areas. That is something which is slowly evolving on that one. And then the alternative, and this is something which I said is important, because this is going to take time. As I said, it's strategically people in the government of India had to work and put into a long term. It's a long term commitment. It's not just something you do today and you go away tomorrow. If you are not willing to put that in and over a period, as I said, build the trust, move forward, etc., then the option is you do nothing. You continue as of today. The same political perspective, you say they are all corrupt, this thing, etc., and they say you are corrupt and you are not responsible, and there's a lot of allegations, rumors, money changing hands, and so on and so forth. And perhaps, I keep saying, the situation may not deteriorate. It will continue like this. So long as, 10, 20 people die, nobody is bothered, it's okay, let it go on. And maybe after 50 years, who knows how things will turn out. Some things will happen, something will go on. And as somebody said, the idea of India itself has been evolving right from independence onwards, goes on, and we don't know what's going to happen. So why bother? Why spend time? Because this requires a lot of human capital, a lot of energy, and so on and so forth, to areas which are small but strategically important for India. They're also important in terms of what I would call it as really the diversity of India. The very fact that it's so important in one sense, having what I would call as the Northeast as part of India, it really in one sense enriches India. Can you imagine today in India without the Northeast? You are actually would be very poorer in that sense. And I can tell you the practical aspects of that, which sometimes we do it. I mean, you might call it when I was dealing with the India-Japan FTA, Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, and we were moving for the pharmacy, we wanted access to the pharmacy market. And they kept saying, no, the Japanese are different, we are Mongoloids and so on. So I said, we have also got a Mongoloid community in India. We said, no, but the medicines there, that if you inject that, that's separate, it might react differently and so on and so on. I said, no, but we have tried all these medicines on people in the Northeast, nobody has died. And they had no argument beyond the, to say that it's the same, the same this thing, etc. I'm only just giving you one example of how having this, it's so much, in one sense, favorable for India as we deal with Southeast Asia and the Pacific countries itself. And it is important. And I think that is really the way forward in terms of Manipur. If you do not, I've given, in one sense, a very quick bird's eye view. Otherwise, for each one of those slides, I possibly can speak for 2-3 hours. Because if you don't look at this view as something on which we need to work. See, the institutions, as I mentioned, it's because we have a tendency with us, and I keep telling, in Jammu and Kashmir, there were 4 police training institutions. And when I went to visit them, and I found that the sanction strength in the police station units was, take a guess, 0. Police training institutions with no sanction staff. So how were the Jammu and Kashmir police trained? Whenever courses were sent, you called 3 fellows from this police station, from 2 fellows from that police station. Some local SP was told, okay, go and spend 2 weeks there. You are the principal of the police training college. Teach the constables. What kind of people will come out of those institutions? This is the same thing which you find sometimes. Even in Manipur, I went, the Manipur Police Training College, I think it had about 1,200 people and it had, I think, 4,000 plus people being trained. Every single classroom became a barrack. And all of them are being taught in the old Guru Parampara, this thing, they were all being taught in the open, under the trees. Lectures were being given under the trees because suddenly 4,000 people had to be recruited, no training institutes, and so on. And I remember, I think, my great friend Ajay Sani, you saw that article, he says, why can't you do, why does it take 8 years or something to expand from 1 lakh to 2 lakhs? And I said, it's because people don't understand. I have to acquire land, that's a problem. I have to construct buildings. Then I have to get the equipment, the training equipment for the institutes. And then I have to get trainers. And it's not that easy to get 1 lakh trainers who, as it is, nobody in the police likes to go to a training institute. It's a punishment posting for every IPS officer. You post him to a training institution and he'll fall at your feet. And that is the key to many of these issues which have to be discussed and put slowly. And I'll stop here. That's basically it.